Welcome to the pre-show, everyone. You know, I should do more with this pre-show. I just use it to get set up and get my head on and get all my buttons pushed and all of that. But I should do more with it. It's 4.5 minutes of radio time. Well, podcast time. We don't go radio time till 4 minutes and 25 seconds after. So, hey, Leslie Holker. Well, thank you very much, Leslie. I appreciate that. That's really cool. Thank you. And June Shasta, welcome. Good to see you. Leslie, June, you say, wow, Leslie has done more to help this broadcast than a lot of people, and she's always been there to help us out and to help keep the expenses covered, and she is a good friend, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So I say wow, too, but you know what I mean. We're twin powers because I put a super thanks on his last Sunday show, but I don't think so. I don't think I saw it. I'll have to go look at that, June. Sorry about that. Sometimes Sunday I watch the chat room closer than I do during a regular show because, well, it's easy to do on Sunday. But thank you. I appreciate everything you're doing, Leslie and June and everybody else. Hey, Barbie D. And so there, we're all set up now and ready to go. Mics are set. The stream is on over at the radio station. So now we just kill a couple of minutes until we get there. So who all is talking to me over here? Oh, that's something very different. Okay. I shut that stuff off. And bada boom, bada bing. Get that ready. Okay. We're pretty much ready to roll. How about that? So it's become a lot easier with the new recording that I do. So, and it's storing them all up, these recorded sessions. So I've got to get some of them edited and over to the radio station so they can go up on Spreaker and places like that, and you can hear the archives. Hey, Susie Q, good to see you. Welcome tonight. And Romeldian, good to see you as well. And Dark Truth is here. Good to see you. Glad to see you again, I should say. So good to have you here. We have about, a minute and a half, a little less than that before we go live. Even though we're live here in the chat room and live on YouTube, we still have yet to go live on the radio station. That's coming. So, hey, Michelle Canham Free. Good to see you. All right. How's everybody's day? My day was all right. I'm getting less done these days, but I got more work. That's funny. Isn't it? So, I mean, it's just the way it goes some days. 3 minutes, 54 seconds after the hour. Okay, we're getting close. So here's what we're going to do. As you know, we go dark for a few seconds, then the show starts in earnest. So all of you sit tight, and in about 10 seconds, we'll be rolling. So here we go. Going dark. Be right back.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, happy Tuesday evening, folks. Welcome to the program. This is your host, Scotty Roberts, right here on the Intrepid radio program here on Odyssey Radio. That's ODYSY radio.com. If you want to go over and check them out, see everything that's going on the radio station, all the shows that are playing there, times, schedules, all of that. So also, you are probably watching this show, if you're in the YouTube channel, you're watching it in the simulcast form, video and chat room over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts, or you can take off the Mr. It'll still get you there, but it's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. It's funny how old things, that was the old address like a year ago. And I used to say it every day. And now every now and then an old thing creeps up and just comes right out of your mouth. So Scotty Roberts is the address. And you can also watch it on Facebook, facebook.com/Odyssey Radio. And if you are new here to the chat room over on the YouTube channel, why don't you subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed? And you can hit the subscribe button. You can also give me a thumbs up on the video over on the YouTube channel. And if you have not joined, down here below the window, there is a little join button. Just click on that and you can become a member of this channel. There's 3 ways you can do it. Click on that link and it'll show you how. And so thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, everybody that's coming into the chat room bit by bit. Welcome back to the program. Grumpy Stack, I see you over there. I got your call today, by the way. I called you. You butt dialed me. I called you back, left you a message. Then you called me back, and I wasn't at the phone. So we'll work it out in the next 24 hours, I'm sure. So welcome to the chat room tonight, by the way. And everybody else who's over there, thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it more than you can know. And we were talking last night about ghost hauntings. I was going to say ghost hunting. We weren't really talking about ghost hunting. We were talking about ghosts and talking about some localities around here where there's some ghosts. We also started our little mini series that we're inserting in the middle of Marcus Aurelius and his meditations on ancient ghosts and how some ancient civilizations looked at ghosts and how they viewed them. We looked at a little bit even last night how even biblically speaking, you had Jesus would talk about ghosts. He would talk about casting spirits out of houses. And if that evil spirit came back, it would bring 7 more evil spirits with it. Things like that. And his disciples in the gospel stories thought he was a ghost at one point when they saw him in the story of him walking on the water. And so ghosts, all that attributes to is, I don't know if that's the proper way to say that. All that really demonstrates is that by calling him a ghost at that time, that was a very well-known thing. Ghosts and hauntings were well-known a very long time ago. Then in the captain's cabin last night after the show, which, by the way, if you've never been there, after the show, we keep the YouTube channel playing after the end credits, And we just come on the YouTube channel with the Captain's Cabin. And sometimes Professor Bauer joins us. Sometimes Uncle Dave joins us. And we talk about some of the things from the show or other things altogether. But it's a little afterglow, a little less formal. We're off the radio waves at that point and just doing the stream. And so last night we talked a little bit about asking the questions. Is a perception of God a perception of the spirit realm? Are all those things that needed to be taught to us, or are those innate to us as human beings, like other realms of nature? When we talk about animals or dogs and cats, and people say, well, I wonder if they're more susceptible to the invisible, the things that we can't see, because they sometimes react to those things, or they react to something that we attribute to those things. So do we have instincts like that are long since dormant in us? Or is there an innate sense of the spiritual realm? So it's really an interesting thing to look into. And I want to look into that some more, but not tonight. Tonight, when we want to pick up our series on looking at this little mini series, this parenthetical series, talking about ghosts in ancient times. And I find this fascinating because it gives us, we sometimes look at ancient times and we look at ancient peoples and say, they were more superstitious than we are, and they pretty much govern their lives by gods and goddesses and angels and demons and spirit beings and ghosts and all these different things. Yet we also look back at them and say, wow, they believed some of the same things we still hold on to and believe today about some of those very things, which makes it very interesting to look at. Hey, Sarah Yusuf, welcome to the program. Welcome to the chat room, I should say. So that's something interesting that I think we can continue to look at and continue to examine that point. Maybe we'll touch on it again in the Captain's Cabin tonight. So if you're not doing anything when the show ends in less than an hour, the top of the hour, join us in the Captain's Cabin. And so tonight, before we get into looking more at the ancient civilizations and how they viewed ghosts and hauntings and things like that, I wanted to get into some somewhat familiar turf. You know that one of my first books was The Rise and Fall of the NEPHILIM. And 3 or 4 years ago, I read that entire book on this show over a course of nights. Well, there's some segments I want to look at in that tonight, because in talking about ancient ghosts and ancient hauntings and so on, if you saw the graphic for tonight's show, I've got the working title for tonight's show being From NEPHILIM to Ghosts Extreme. And it's talking about how we've got these characters, the NEPHILIM, but who are they really? Who are these watchers? And I want to dig into that just a little bit. And what role did they play in what we recognize today as ghosts and hauntings and demonic and things like that? Well, thank you, Leslie. She's read The Rise and Fall of the NEPHILIM a few times. It's a good book. I hope it was good the second time and third time around. I might brush my hair and come in. Probably not, says Sarah Yusuf. You are welcome to come in, though. So we'll post a link for that. It's down in the description. Hey, Feather Girl. That's my wife. Passing by wearing only a feather. So it must be the native blood in her, which is about this much. She's Black Irish and all that kind of stuff. So I thought she was saying something to me. Well, there you go, radio folks. You can't see nothing over here. Even those of you who are in the chat room cannot see it in video. She's way over there. But one of the acts of the Watchers, who were the ones who bequeathed the NEPHILIM to the planet Earth, according to the biblical text. It talks about the sons of God, the Bnei HaElohim, which were also known as the Watchers. They were the ones who descended down onto the earth in the book of Enoch, and you see it at the beginning of the book of Genesis. And they had children with human women and bequeathed the Nephilim. So what about the acts of the Watchers? Are they still functioning today on this planet? Are the Watchers good guys? Are they the bad guys? They were certainly deemed as having done something wrong when they came down and intermingled with human women. And of course, all this has the caveat on it that this is biblical mythology. Did it really happen? We don't know. But there seems to be indicators that these spiritual things, by whatever name you call them, have all happened, and that the spiritual world exists. The Watchers allegedly provided esoteric knowledge to humanity, says Sarah Yusuf over in the chat room. Yeah, they did. It doesn't enumerate those things in the book of Genesis. When Moses writes about them, he calls them the sons of God, as it's translated in the English. In the Hebrew, the Bnei HaElohim. And these are the sons of God that came down and intermingled with the daughters of men, and also known as the Watchers. And in the book of Enoch, however, they enumerate some of those things that Sarah just mentioned. Hey, what you looking for over there?
Do you have thick readers?
My readers? I do. If you come over here, I can reach them. Pardon me, radio
I
audience.
sliced my finger open with wood,
Ouch.
and I'm not sure if I have a sliver in it. I can't
Uh-oh.
see it.
Uh-oh. Sorry to hear that. Sorry. My wife's bleeding, splintering. So, a legitimate interruption. So, at least it's not a child trying to get attention. I think that was clarified in the apocryphal book of Enoch. Exactly, Sarah. That's what I was going to say. While you don't have any of that enumerated in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, you do have the book of Enoch, which goes into great detail. Talks about the 200 prefects from heaven who came down and set foot on the slopes of Mount Armon, or Mount Hermon, today we would know it. And how it says they went into the human women among any of those they chose, and they loved them and intermingled with them and had children by them. And so it's only a flesh wound, June. Very good. But yes, that's where you find a lot of information about the Nephilim in the book of Enoch. Now, and by the way, if you heard that, if any of you saw Rainey's post, that was the bell going up, but a child did that, opening the door upstairs. So,
Oh my God, I got a freaking sliver in it. It's driving me insane.
I'm sorry, baby. She's got a sliver in her slice on her finger, so she's trying to dig it out. So we might hear some screaming in the background. So, are the Watchers still happening today? Are they still coming to the earth today? Are they still? Hold on, everybody on radio. Does everybody realize I am doing a radio show? Let's not scream in the background. You'd think after 20 years of doing this, 3 years on this show, my kids would get it. But no, not yet. So they all went upstairs and shut the door. So that's good. I've driven them out. I've driven them from before the Lord's presence. So, is mankind still being visited by the members of the Divine Council, who I believe the Watchers were? The Elohim, the members of the Divine Council. So are these people still, these beings still coming to Earth? And are those who left that domain thousands of years ago still coming here? And what are the Nephilim themselves, the offspring? Doesn't it say the flood was a means by which God was using to eradicate the hybrid Nephilim from the planet Earth? Now, this is all leading up to something I'm going to talk to you about ghosts and demonics and the negative and the evil spirits that we run into when we do ghost hunting and so on. But where are they now? I like this verse in the New Testament book of Hebrews, and it's 13:2. It says, "Don't forget to show hospitality to strangers, for some who have done this have entertained angels without realizing it." So, are there beings out there? And by the way, let me be very specific about this. The Watchers were not angels. We've talked about that on this show before. There's specific word for angel in the writings, and it's malach or malachim for plurality of angels. They're not called that. They're called Elohim, and which is the God of many gods, the sons of the gods of many, God of many gods, the Bnei Ha Elohim, the Watchers. They're not angelic. So there's this pervasive question regarding the Nephilim as to whether or not they're still among us today. And the answer would simply be, and I write about this in the book, yes, they are, but obviously not in the same form as they interacted with humanity thousands of years ago. And though there might be a bloodline remnant of the Nephilim evident throughout all of history, it would be a safe bet to say that it no longer has anything to do with the original Watchers. And their influence died thousands of years ago. And unless there are more Watchers in the heavens who didn't fall to earth that day so long ago, and that God held judgment against, according to Psalm 82, you can look that up and read that. It says, "And Elohim stood in the midst of the Elohim, and he said to them, you are all Elohim, the bright shining princes of heaven." But then he goes to pass judgment on them. And so unless there are more Watchers in the heavens who didn't fall to the earth, there's little probability that their influence will ever be seen again, at least not in the same way. But the same can't be said for their offspring. Now, it's unknown whether the entire divine council of gods came to earth way back when they all came down. It said 200 of them set their foot on the slopes of Mount Armon and went in amongst human women. We don't know for sure, nor is there any way to calculate the number of beings who may have descended and intermingled with humanity over the millennia. But what we do know for a certainty is that nearly every ancient culture experienced this brand of extraterrestrial interruption, meaning not of this earth, interruption, on some level, bequeathing offspring that took the form of what we now deem as mythological or legendary beings. Or better, those of old and the men of renown. From the Tuatha De Danann, the elven deities, the statuesque, bright, shining giants of the Celtic peoples, to the Sasquatch of the Native Americans, there have been genetic footprints left in nearly every ancient culture throughout all of recorded history. And make no mistake, I have in this particular book, my book that I'm reading from, I've enumerated all these different legends and stories and beings that can be attributed to the Watchers and the Nephilim. So as we've already seen, there were remnants of the Nephilim found in various passages of the Old Testament. As early as the time of Abraham, you see mention of them. The Nephilim were mentioned as having dwelled in the region around the Dead Sea, scattered among several tribes. The footnotes of the Jerusalem Bible suggest that Moses, in the Genesis 6 passage, intended his words on the Nephilim to be an anecdote of a superhuman race. So according to the Jerusalem Bible's commentary, Moses doesn't go into great detail, nor does he make any bones about representing the Nephilim as the offspring of superhuman beings, as it was already a known entity in his day. He merely references them, and I believe from the book of Enoch. People say, oh, the book of Enoch only dates to the 400s BCE. Well, that's when the copies were made. That's when copies were made by the 72 rabbis at the Library of Alexandria, where we get the Septuaginta, the Greek version of the Old Testament. You read your Old Testament now, that's the Septuagint, the Septuaginta. And I think you also had the books of Enoch, the other apocryphal books that were included in that, those rewritings after the captivity of Israel by Babylon. So nearly every ancient culture experienced this brand of infiltration. And Nephilim were found in the various passages of the Old Testament. Abraham, they were mentioned as having dwelled around the Dead Sea. The footnotes of the Jerusalem Bible, which we just talked about, mentions them. An anecdote of a superhuman race. And according to the Jerusalem Bible's commentary, Moses doesn't go into great detail about them. He merely references them in order to establish in his account of Noah's flood the severity of the wickedness, quote unquote, that was present on the earth prior to the meting out of God's judgment by flood. The reason for the flood we were taught in Sunday school, and we've covered this many times on this show in various different ways. What's the reason we were given? That God brought the flood, Noah's flood, the wickedness of man. But it's really the wickedness of man brought to man by this race of hybrid beings. So it was present on the earth prior to the meting out of God's judgment. So in Christian evangelical circles, there are those who believe that these watchers came down to pollute the messianic bloodline of Jesus Christ. Remember, we've gone through the whole bloodline from Adam to Abraham to David to the time of Jesus, biblically speaking. We looked at this bloodline, and it was a line that was showing the line of the pure human bloodline, as opposed to what has obviated the not human bloodline. And those two bloodlines being in existence. And it's evangelical Christianity tends to believe that the Watchers came down to pollute the messianic bloodline. And by interfering with human DNA, the pure, necessary humanity of the Messiah could thus be thwarted before it ever came to be. This was the plan of the evil one, according to Christianity. Along with ancient alienists, Chuck Missler, an evangelical Christian, also believes that the Watchers were extraterrestrials or possibly even the gray aliens, as cliche as they've become, the gray aliens, who were in actuality, they were the fallen angels, the demonic beings that were setting out to muddy the messianic waters. Now, that's one theory. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, other than here, when I've read this book on air before. Sarah Yusuf asked, do you think that Watchers carried the same ego and hubris that the fallen angels carried? Possibly. The difference being is that they were the divine council. They were the Elohim. They were the ones that were called the little gods, the Elohim. God used the same name for them, the Watchers, as he used for himself. Elohim. El being the name God. Ochim, of many. The God of many. And literally the God of many gods, or among many gods. And he was speaking to the gods among many gods. Because Elohim can be a singular or a plural word, as we've talked about here before. So yeah, I think there is something to that, Sarah. The Watchers were these extraterrestrials. They were the fallen angels, the evil spirits, the demonic beings that were setting out to muddy the messianic waters. Now, you might already see where I'm going with this and how I'm making the tie from the Nephilim to the evil, the ghostly encounters. The history of the human race is synonymous with the history of a great spiritual conflict. When we view world politics today, many of us wonder why we just can't all come to the table and settle disputes in a peaceful fashion. Look at the current crises in our own country over Supreme Court rulings. So to some extent, it seems to me that the gods and every caste of spiritual being beneath seems intent on not being able to do what seems so common sense to humans. There was not a war in heaven. There is an ongoing war, a conflict that makes the stuff of earthly battles seem absolutely insignificant. And it's been taking place since before the dawn of time itself. Now, the only problem with my saying that, I can't back that up with anything factual. That is a faith belief. That's a belief that's put forward in three faiths, really, of the earth. Now, there's a demonology connection. It's interesting to note that so much of what we read in the biblical accounts of the first family, Adam and Eve, and the subsequent books of the law revolve around sexuality. You notice that? And the encoded messages of adultery and sexual prohibition. Just pick up a Bible, read the first the first 5 books of the Old Testament. You're going to get the picture. The subtext in those 5 books is rife with pictures of God's relationship to man being taking on the tone of a marriage, any deviation from which would be adulterous. And adultery, in accordance with biblical law, bore the punishment of death, but only for the woman, not the man. I find that interesting. Is this a residual condemnation placed on the female because it was she who was tempted in the Garden of Eden, according to especially to Christian sects, thereby bringing on the fall of mankind? Is it residual judgment of the woman who introduced the world to the Nephilim by sleeping with the Watchers, allowing the world to be corrupted by their offspring? We don't know this stuff, but these are the implications. These are the charges that get made. Now, that's if you believe this story, this account of how these things took place. So creation is sexual in nature. And if you don't believe that, you need to get out more. Creation is sexual in nature. Whether it was simple lust, as the Genesis passage tells us, or the seeking of elemental power over creation, the heavenly beings were drawn to the sexuality of humans. And make no mistake, the Garden of Eden story, which we've talked about on this show before, was all an encoded message of sexual encounter and of the impregnating of the human woman with a dual seed, twins, Cain and Abel, and the seed being that of the man and that of Elohim, which would be really the first Nephilim that would be on this earth. So whether it's that simple lust or the elemental power over creation, the heavenly beings were drawn to the sexuality of humans. And don't try to define away the word lust as something other than what its true intent, which is sexual in its basic, most primal etymology. Could it also be said that so much of what we read in the Bible, accounts of early mankind, the serpent in the garden, the Watchers, the overtly sexually discriminating, gender-biased Mosaic law, are so sexually underwritten in their subtexts that they were created for the sole purpose of enforcing patriarchal rule? And was that patriarchal rule contrived out of scapegoating the female gender for all of mankind's spiritual woes? Were the questionably misogynistic mandates laid out for the early Christian church by the Apostle Paul simply there for the intent of controlling women in first century patriarchal Judean society? Or were they in adherence to what was even then the ancient notion that women needed to be kept covered to prevent the temptations of angels and other spirit beings, as Paul writes about verbatim? We hear that nowadays. Well, that guy that raped that woman, he did it because of the way she was dressed. So we still do it nowadays. Paul said, keep women covered so you don't tempt the angels. And you don't tempt other spirit beings to have sex with them. That's weird stuff, isn't it? But it's there. So it's clear that the Judeo-Christian scriptures contain a resounding undertone of sexual prohibition that can trace its foundations all the way back to the role that women played in the downfall of man and the corruption and destruction of the world by the Nephilim. So clearly, it's the sexual promiscuity of women that brought on the greatest woes of the world. And clearly the undercode of sexual prohibition is there to remind them of their follies and to keep them suppressed as punishment for their gender-driven acts. And the Watchers weren't the only ones placed under lock and key when God imposed judgment on the world. So make no mistake, it was the early church fathers who first said that the angels and other spirit beings were sexless. It's completely fabricated by the fathers of the early church. The extra-biblical notion. Scripture never states that angels and demons can't engage in sex. In the highly quoted passage in Matthew 22:30 has Jesus telling his followers that angels do not marry. He doesn't, however, say that they're incapable of sex. And the context of his words in this passage focus on the righteous angels, not the unrighteous demons. And keep in mind, the Elohim, when they came down and intermingled with the daughters of men, they weren't angels. Another factor in there to consider is that they didn't, they married the women that they chose. Jesus said angels don't marry. So these weren't angels, by the way. The Watchers who came in amongst women. But we're taking this a step further now to get into the whole ghost issue. The entire contextual point of Christ's argument is that people will not marry in heaven. He's not particularly discussing the sexual habits of angels. There's something more to all of this, something deeper. There's some alien conspiracy theorists contend that the church has been silent about UFOs and alien abductions and about alien hybridization programs and fetus thefts and all the impregnation of women by these beings. Yet all along, the church has spoken out as loudly as any other voice in that it has a complete doctrine built around the infiltration and interference of the demonic on humanity. And it all stems from the very first impregnation of Eve in the garden by the character known as the serpent later. It was also he who fathered Cain, the first of the Nephilim. And this act was repeated throughout all of antediluvial humanity until God had had enough and there was a judgment. A great flood was brought. Now, according to Roman Catholic Church doctrine, the fallen have been attempting to breed the perfect hybrid offspring of spirit and human since the time of the resurgence of humanity onto the still damp floodplains of ancient Mesopotamia. And in accordance with Roman Catholic systematic theology, and in the simplest of terms, God keeps demons on a pretty short leash. They can't do anything without his consent or his allowance, according to theology. And the account of the descent of the Watchers is not to be misconstrued as demonic attempts at breeding with human women. The Watchers, as we've seen, were not demonic, nor were they fallen angels. They were the minor gods of the divine council who left their first estate and descended to their charges, the humans, to interbreed with them. And the judgment imposed on them is hinted at in Psalm 82. It says, they were stripped of their immortality and died like mortal men. All right. Now, the next section I wrote here is from genetic hybrid to demon. By the way, I'm reading this from my own book, The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim. I'm adding a lot of commentary into it as well. I mean, it's not a straight reading, or it would sound like one, but you get the idea. So although it's commonplace in Judeo-Christian circles to believe that demons are simply the angels who rebelled against God and were cast to the earth, the book of Enoch gives us a very different alternative to that tradition. Listen to this. And now, this is from the book of Enoch, and now the giants who were produced from the spirits in the flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. And on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies because they are born from men and from the holy watchers. And that's their beginning and their primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on the earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall their dwelling be. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, like the Nephilim were born on the earth as the offspring of the watchers and human women. As for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth shall their dwelling be. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men, and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. That's Enoch 15, 8 through 12. So the Enochian passage is implicit. It's the spirits of the Nephilim killed in the great flood that are the demonic forces that dwell on the earth today. The flesh and bone Nephilim, once killed, became the evil spirits that will dwell forever on the earth. So somebody said there's a lot of deep questions going on here tonight. June turns water to wine. You can come to my house. Huh? And because I got a tap full of water. So we'll look back at those in the captain's cabin tonight after the show, some of the questions that were asked here. But it's been here on the, it was here on the earth that the Nephilim were born. It's here on the earth that they died. And because they were fathered by spirit beings, Enoch tells us that they will forever dwell on the earth in the form of spirits, only evil spirits. The ghosts of the Nephilim are the demonic host who have plagued humanity throughout the ages. The offspring of the Watchers and human women were disruptive, corrupt, and evil in nature, and that's why the divine sent a great flood to wipe them out. Evidently, in spirit form, they're no different. And there was Lilith comes into the picture here. The spirits of the Nephilim are the great harassers of mankind. They are the true fallen, those who came down, those who descended, those who fell. They troubled mankind to the point of watery judgment imposed by the supreme God, and they continue in spirit form to commit evil against humanity. And the Watchers aren't fallen angels, as we've established already in the book, but they're offspring, whose mix of extraterrestrial, meaning non-earthly, and human DNA made them unique on the earth. They've become the spiritual hounds of hell who torment the living. And they continue wreaking havoc on the earth and in the lives of humans, even today. And by the way, if you sometimes wonder, well, is all this really true? Even if you're a person of faith, it's not really in the Bible. Well, the book of Enoch was only taken out of the scriptural canon by people. They thought it was too wacky. But it was scripture. Jesus quoted from Enoch. A lot of the prophets quoted from Enoch. It existed long before It was rewritten in the 400s. So the next section I have in this book is called Sleeping with the Enemy. In the Gilgamesh epic, the god-man Gilgamesh's father is listed as Lilu, and he is one of the earliest mentions of an incubus. The story hails from ancient Mesopotamia and is found in the Sumerian king list, 2400 BCE, so we're talking 4,400 years ago, where it's said that Lilu seduced women in their sleep and had sex with them. At the same time, Lilitu, or Lilith, a female demon, appeared to men in their erotic dreams. So both Lilu and Lilitu strove to fulfill their sexual desires and create offspring. To create offspring. According to Roman Catholic theology, many times when you hear the stories of people saying they've encountered the demonic or evil spirits, they say their eyes were blackened out. You couldn't see their eyes. They were like holes, or they were missing a limb or something like that. This is something that, according to Roman Catholic theology, you don't find this in the Bible. It's in the theology that says that the demonic, when they keep trying to interbreed with humans and create humans, God has them on that short leash, which we mentioned. They can only go so far. And so they can take human form by becoming human, a mix of the two, but there's always got to be something missing. They don't have the eyes. They don't have a leg. There's some body part that they'd be missing, according to the biblical mythology and according to Roman Catholic theology. So, Lilith was that female demon who appeared to men in their erotic dreams. And both Lilu and Lilitu strove to fulfill their sexual desires and create offspring. Regarding Lilith herself, she's a character found in Jewish mythology. And she's mentioned earliest in the Babylonian Talmud, documents compiled between the 3rd and the 4th centuries AD. And in the Jewish folklore, during the 8th to 10th centuries AD, Lilith became known as Adam's first wife. Do you know that? Adam was married twice, according to rabbinic literature. And Lilith was his first wife. And this mythology developed into a widely accepted view among the Jews of the Middle Ages as the legend became more refined and expanded. The 13th century writings of Rabbi Isaac ben Jacob Alfasi Hakon had Lilith leaving Adam, refusing to return to Eden after she refused to become subservient to Adam. I'm going to be subservient to a man, says this demonic woman. And she later mated with Archangel Samael, according to rabbinic tradition. The resulting Lilith legend is still found in modern Western culture, literature, occultism, fantasy, and even horror. She's even become a cult favorite in the spiritist feminist community of modern day. And so it's said in some traditions that Lilith, taking the form of a male, was actually the serpent in the garden who seduced Eve and then went on to seduce Adam with grave consequence. There's a quote here that I have in here. And the serpent, the woman of harlotry, incited and seduced Eve through the husks of light, which in itself is holiness. And the serpent seduced holy Eve, and enough said for him who understands. And all this ruination came about because Adam, the first man, coupled with Eve while she was in her menstrual impurity. And this is the filth and the impure seed of the serpent, who mounted Eve before Adam mounted her. I love those terms. Behold, here it is before you. Because of the sins of Adam, the first man, and all the things mentioned came into being. For evil Lilith, when she saw the greatness of this corruption, she became strong in her husks and came to Adam against his will and became hot from him and bore him many demons and spirit children and Lilin. And so it was the first offspring of Lilith by Adam, according to rabbinic tradition, that was said in this tradition to have become the host of demons. And this is really the birth of the modern understanding of the incubus and the succubus, demonic beings who sleep with humans for the purpose of satiating some innate sexual drive and for the purpose of creating spiritual offspring. So, I got to see if I need to skip a little bit here. Let's jump all the way ahead now to the paranormal section here. Now, this all sounds so fanciful, doesn't it? It's the stuffs of dark imaginings. And it's no wonder the scientific community shuns the slightest notion of any of this. There's very little of this that can be proven by physical evidence. So once again, it's all governed by the tone of what you choose to believe. Do the demonic spirits of the Nephilim have sex with humans to continue to propagate a species of mixed blood spirit beings? It seems that even in death, the offspring of the Watchers continue to perpetuate their raging corruption of humanity. But you can't prove that. This is part of the mythology, so to speak. And so what I was writing about in this section and what I want to get to here before we are done is this whole idea of the paranormal. There's a great and grave fascination with demons among modern paranormal hobbyists and ghost hunters. The surge of ghost hunting and the paranormal investigation throughout the last 2 decades, spurred on by the success of pop cultural live-action paranormal television, has fostered a rise in interest in demons and demonology. I'm a demonologist. And the study of evil spirits and their influence on people. However, with the rise of pop cultural influence also comes the rise in pop cultural application. And the vast majority of so-called demonologists operating today have little knowledge of, pardon the pun, what the hell it is they claim to be. And they have little ability to enact on the behalf of those tormented by what we refer to as demonic spirits or evil spirits. And having an interest in the demonic is not the same as having experience with helping people who are in bondage to these beings. It's been belittled. What's that line from The Usual Suspects, the old Kevin Spacey movie? The devil's greatest lie was convincing humanity that he didn't exist. So, are the ghosts encountered during highly popularized paranormal investigations in any way linked to the spirits of the Nephilim we talked about earlier? The short answer is yes. Something I've always said when investigating claims of ghosts and encountering the spirit world is that you never know who you're really talking to. Without making a case for the existence of human ghosts, suffice it to say that it's more often than not that a demon is going to deceive you, an evil spirit, if you will, is going to deceive you into believing it's a ghost of a dead human, rather than an actual encounter with those who've passed on and are still roaming the hallways and attics of old houses and abandoned insane asylums. And the evil spirits encountered in demonological settings are the spirits of the Nephilim, who died in the great flood. That long passage I read you a bit earlier from the book of Enoch says that the Watchers came down, not angels. Elohim came down, intermingled with the daughters of men, had children by them. Those children were the Nephilim. Those Nephilim became so numerous and brought mankind that God imposed a great flood to kill them off. And it says in this, and Enoch says, and the spirits of the Nephilim are the evil spirits that will dwell on the earth forever. Not the angelic spirits or the demonic. They come from heaven and they belong in heaven. It says these are the earthbound spirits. And so are the Nephilim among us today? Most certainly they are. In both physical remnants that have bred into the bloodlines of the human race and the ghostly presence and influence of the Nephilim demonics or evil spirits. It's probably a good way to put it. So let me reemphasize that. And this is the whole point of everything I've been talking about tonight, is that Enoch establishes that the spirits of the slain Nephilim, because they are earthbound, because they were half human. They are earthbound. They're not heavenbound like demonics and angels. That they are the ones whose spirits dwell forever on the face of the earth and will be the tormentors of mankind through that whole time. Is that fantastical to believe? Well, if you can believe in a spirit world, this is just another facet of it. I believe the spirit world exists. I've experienced it. However, this is based in some Judeo-Christian theology. And you're going to have to dig into that pretty deep to see this stuff. I think what you encounter when you encounter the evil, dark spirits today, especially when you're ghost hunting and you run across these beings, you're actually encountering the spirits of the Nephilim. So this is the tie-in. That's how Nephilim, from Nephilim as the title of tonight's show, from Nephilim to ghostly extreme. That's what you're dealing with. All right, tomorrow we're going to get back into the ancient world of ghosts. Right now, we've got just a few seconds and we're out of here. So I want to thank you for being here. Stick around if you want for the Captain's Cabin, which comes right after this show. So live long and prosper.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
All right, folks, we're back for the Captain's Cabin. Thanks for being here for the show tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night, of course, with the Intrepid radio program at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, same as always. And so I hope you enjoyed that tonight. That's some pretty heavy-duty stuff when you start thinking of it in theological terms. Thank you, Leslie Holker, for putting that link up there. So, what's your thoughts on this stuff? How are you guys reacting to this? I know that there was a lot of questions. I think it was June said there's a lot of heavy-duty questions tonight. Yeah, Washington, D.C., Leslie, the ultimate corruption of humanity. Lilith with Fraser, says Barbie D. Yeah, I thought of that too when that character first came on. Yeah, Adam had an ex. According to rabbinic tradition, why isn't that repeated in Christian tradition? Don't know. She was in the alphabet of Ben Sirah, says Sarah Yusuf. Yes, she was. Let's see. I'm going backwards, looking at some of the comments. Professor Bauer, good question. Maybe in King James world. Let's see. What did Professor Bauer ask? I got to go back to your question. Where did they find dudes named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the Middle East 2,000 years ago? That's a good question. Maybe Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are actually ancient Hebrew types of names that we've acquired in modern times. And they became so common in modern times because Catholic parents kept naming their kids Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's why the name became so common. Maybe that's the answer to that. I don't know for sure. It sounds right to me. Sarah said Lilith also asked to differentiate types of sex, such as rape and consensual marriage. Yeah. You can see why she's used for some of the more spiritually occult-based women's movements, because she was also really the archetypical lesbian. She came in the form of a man to seduce women and have sex with them. She could do both. She was ambidextrous, I guess. So it's interesting stuff. See what else we got. Matthew Sainsbury quotes Isaiah 14. How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How are you cut down, you who weakened the nations? For you said in your heart, I'll be like the Most High. Now, there is some thinking that that has actually nothing to do with who we attribute as Lucifer, Satan, or the devil. It's an interesting study, by the way. We've covered some of that. So, anyway, I was asking, what are your thoughts? That's the first I'd heard of it, Scotty, says Leslie, that Adam had an ex. Sounds like she was a tainted woman. Yeah, she was a bitter woman, too, I think. A bitter, evil spirit woman. Is that worse than a bitter woman? Mike Yehudi! Yehudi! He says, I've heard of these human angel hybrids. Yeah. And Mike, they're not angels. They're Elohim when we're talking about the Nephilim. Angels was a misinterpretation. The word angel in the Hebrew never appears in the descriptions in the book of Enoch. Never appears in Genesis when it's speaking of them coming down and impregnating human women. So, they're called Elohim, sons of the God of many gods, the Bene Ha Elohim. So, awesome show, says Dark Truth. Thank you, Dark Truth. Thanks for being here. If you're still here and you heard my thanks, I appreciate that. That's why she left him, to cohabitate with demons. There you go. That's why she had Adam impregnate her to spread the demonic seed around. You think about that. Sarah says Lilith wanted equality in all things, not wanting to stick to the traditional totem pole structure. Indeed, that's very true. She did not want to be subservient to a human man when she wasn't a human at all, but she was a female spirit. So that's why she left him. June says Lucifer is also Venus. There you go. Lilith was paired with female empowerment, especially after being beaten down by male patriarchy, right? Well, I don't know that she was beaten down. I think as God said, I want you to marry Adam, have his kids. She's like, no way. I'm not doing that. I don't think she was beaten down. I think she just made a choice. I'm not doing that. I don't think there was a male patriarchy in place to beat her down. We're talking at the beginning of all things. So, yeah, I think that's more modern sentiment that we put on it. Yeah. Sarah, I would say no, that she wasn't beaten down by the patriarchy at all. She was a created being. She was a demonic spirit, according to the traditions. She was an evil spirit who was female. And she was in no way, shape, or form going to go down. And she wasn't beaten down. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had a choice in it. She would have had to do it. She didn't do it. But she went back and had him impregnate her so she could create her children. In the modern sense. Right, Sarah. Association came later. Right. So, Lilith wanted equality in all things, not wanting to stick it to the traditional totem pole structure. Yeah, I get that. There it is. Boom, boom, boom. Well, there you go, folks. I might not do much of a captain's cabin tonight, in that I'm a little tired. And my brain's going to start leaving whatever, the world around me here very soon. And so as chipper and with it and active and as I may come across, I'm rather tired tonight. So Brian Parker says the secret book of Lilith is interesting. It's almost like Paul read it too. I think he probably did. I think a lot of these books existed in much more ancient times. Like I mentioned as we were going through it, some scholars poo-poo the book of Enoch, saying, well, that was only written, 400 BC. But yeah, they're right. It was written 400 BCE. But then again, so was Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, Proverbs, Psalms. All of those books were written in 400 BC because they were all rewritten after the Babylonian captivity and all the documentation had been destroyed. That's why the 72 rabbis went to the Library of Alexandria in Egypt in the 400s to look up all the ancient Hebrew scriptures. Imagine that library, what existed there. All their own books of their faith existed there. And they went and researched, and over a series of, I want to say several years, they recompiled the Old Testament and it was written, of course, in the language of commerce of the day, Greek. And so what we have in our Old Testament now, you pick up a Bible, look at your Old Testament, that's what those 72 rabbis wrote, the Septuagint in Greek. It's the Greek version. Yeshua quoted Enoch. Yes, he did. I used to say, if Enoch was good enough for Jesus to quote, then it's good enough for me. Paul quoted him. Some of the minor prophets quoted from the book of Enoch. So the book existed long before it was rewritten in the 400s. So thanks to Alexander's conquest. Exactly, Matthew Sainsbury. What did Alexander the Great do? He Hellenized the world. He gave us the common language of Greek, which became the language of commerce. The whole New Testament is written in Koine Greek with a few Aramaic passages. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew, but it was also rewritten in Greek. So there you go. Thanks to Alexander's conquest. There it is. Exactly. Yeah, Leslie, I'm about done for the day. Ego is the folly of man, says Mike Yehudi. Spot on, brother. So Shamhat settled down Enkidu from his madness. Yeah, there it is. I think all these stories have common roots. So, all right, guys, I'm going to call it for tonight. And we're going to come back tomorrow night and do this again. I hope you enjoyed this. This is fun stuff for me. I hope it was fun for you. And I hope you'll join me back here again tomorrow night. So, everybody, thanks for being here. Thanks for giving me your time. Live long and prosper.